Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me back in my craft room today for a Pretty Pink Posh tutorial. Today we're going to make some cute little Halloween note cards, and what makes them even more cute is that they are shaker cards. So I have my Spooky Sky stencils. I'm also going to be using the Halloween Signs stamp set, one of my favorite confetti mixes, the Hocus Pocus clay confetti. I've already done some die cutting using the mini scallop card dies, and I created a frame using that stitched square and a smaller square. This particular brand just fit perfectly inside, so I could make my little shaker frames for the front of my mini note cards. For my stenciling today, I'm grabbing this Waffle Flowers Craft Grip Mat. It's 6.5 by 8.5 in size, and I'm just centering it onto my glass mat. It sticks very well to it, and I am placing a sheet of 6 by 6 cardstock that I like to use for ink blending and stenciling. Now, my stencils are 6 by 6, so while the grip mat holds your paper and your stencil, it's not going to hold my stencil very well since my paper matches the size of the stencil. So I'm going to grab some repositionable tape to help me keep my stencil in place while I am ink blending. I'm going to start with the B stencil, which is the clouds, as I want to apply that color down first. And since my background cardstock is white, I'm going to grab a gray color, and I'm using Distress ink in Lost Shadow with a blending brush. And I'm just going to apply that ink through all of the clouds on this stencil. Next, I'll grab the bat stencil and just apply it the same way. And this time I'm going to use black soot and a smaller brush so I could get into all those details for all of the bats through this stencil. And finally, I'll put on my stencil with the stars. And for this one, I want to use some stencil paste so I can get some fun shine in this background. A lot of it will be covered up by the shaker, but I like adding details that you can only see when you're really looking for it. I'm going to be using some stencil paste. This is Shooting Star Lunar Paste from Ranger Ink and Simon Hurley, and I'm just applying it to the top of the stencil using a palette knife, trying not to make too big of a mess on myself. And then I'm using a large scraper to bring all of that stencil paste down. As I continue to do this, I just take my palette knife and spread out more of that paste so I can get it all through the different star openings on the stencil. And it takes me a few attempts here to get it all filled up. And once I'm happy with how much I've applied through the stencil and these stars, I'll go ahead and take my palette knife and save all of that stencil paste and put it right back into the jar for later. I love a good stencil reveal, so let's take a look at how these layered stencils look together with the gray, black, and yellow. I really love this scene and how it turns out. I think this would also look really pretty on some pale colored cardstock, like a pale purple or pale blue, to create a really fun night sky. I have my images ready to go and to be stamped, and I've die cut them already. I had this kind of cut out from the dies in my stash, so I was using it to do my stamping, and I didn't get my stamps lined up perfectly, so a couple of my images I'm just going to save for another project and pick my 4 favorite images that stamped the best. I used an alcohol marker friendly black ink on some alcohol marker friendly white cardstock. And I'm going to use my alcohol markers from Ohuhu. I use the Honolulu markers. I try to get the bees where they have a brush tip and a nib tip, but I'm going to use those to color in my images. And I'm going to pick colors inspired by the Hocus Pocus clay confetti. So really fun, kind of bright, but not too bright, not like crazy neon, but really fun, bright colors. I'm going to show just a little bit of my coloring. My purples I'm coloring with P4 and P3, and my purples will be the spider web as well as the wings of my bat. I did the inside of the wings purple. And I'm just doing some subtle coloring. The web has a lot of space, so I wanted to add color to it so it didn't feel like a big white image on the final little mini shaker note card. For the blacks on my card, I'm using NG06 and NG03 to color in my cute little spider. I filled in the legs with the darker color and then used the lighter color so you could see its face. And I'm going to use that same color combination for my bat as well. My greens are G170 as the darker tone and G130 as the lighter. And I'm just kind of subtly filling in my sign here. I didn't want to fill it in completely with ink, but I wanted it to have a nice green hue. And then for a kind of pinky purple, I'm using P2 as the darker tone and RV100 as the lighter tone. And I'm creating a pink frame for this bat sign. For my candy corn, I'm going to follow the traditional colors. So orange is Y10 and Y4, and my yellow will be Y6 and Y1. And then just to add a little bit of shadow to the white part of my candy corn, I'm using CG200. My ghost, I wanted to bring in some blue, so I'm using B050 as the darker color. And just like all the rest of the images, just going around the edges, trying to just create some shadow. And then I'll bring in a lighter color. This one is B030, and kind of just bringing that dark color out. Again, not fully coloring in the image, but wanting to give it a nice kind of shadow look to it. I use the same orange combination for my ghost sign, and I'm using R21 to add in some little pink cheeks to all of my critters and my ghost. And then I like to take a white gel pen and just add some highlights to my images. I'm focusing just on my little critters and candy corn. I'm not adding any highlights to the sign itself, but just adding some fun, little details to the images. And once I finish adding these highlights, I'll go ahead and zoom back out, and we're going to stamp the sentiments on all of our little signs here. So I have a small little clear block, and I'm starting with Spooky Season, and I'm going to use my VersaFine Onyx Black just to stamp those different sentiments within the images. So Spooky Wishes for my bat, Happy Haunting for my spider, Trick or Treat for the candy corn, and Boo to You for the ghost. I'll go ahead and set those aside, and I'm going to continue on with my stenciled background now that my stencil paste is dry. I wanted to add more color to this, so I'm bringing out some metallic watercolors and just using my spritzer to add water to this kind of purpley blue color, and using a paintbrush to splatter that all over the background. I'm very heavy-handed with it because I want to add a lot of this purple detail to the background. It dries pretty quickly, so I'm just going to wipe my glass mat up real quick, and then I'm going to trim down these panels to fit on the back side of my shaker. So the little square inside this die set is 2.5 by 2.5. So I'm going to grab my paper trimmer, and I'm going to cut 4 squares out of my background to be just slightly smaller than 2.5. You can definitely use the die or cut these directly to 2.5 by 2.5. But when I line up the backs of my shaker cards, sometimes I'm not perfectly straight on. So having the background be slightly smaller just helped me with not feeling the pressure to line them up exactly. So now I have all the pieces of my shaker card, including some acetate that I trimmed down to be slightly smaller than 2.5 by 2.5, just like the background, and for the same reasons, so I don't have to worry about lining it up exactly. I'm taking some, I think this is 1/8 of an inch double-sided adhesive tape, and applying it to all 4 sides on the back side of my black frame. And then I'm going to add my acetate square to that. Now, the clay bits do have a tiny bit of dimension, so I'm using some slightly thicker foam adhesive, but you can use any foam adhesive. If it's not thick enough for your shaker bits, you could just fold it on itself and double it up. I like to peel off the release paper from my foam adhesive so it makes it really easy to curve around corners like my square here. And I did need a second strip, so I just made sure to butt them up very close to the previous strip so none of my shaker bits fall out. I am making 4 shakers today, so I want to make sure I don't use too much of my clay confetti and I can get through all 4 of these little mini note cards. So I'm pouring in some of these adorable little shaker images and confetti, and then adding the back of my shaker. And there is my cute little shaker panel. It's so adorable. I love seeing the bats and the stars peeking through. Now I'm going to glue this down to my card base, my little mini note card base. I love the scallop details on this, and the perforated line across the center of the die cut just makes it so easy to fold in half. I use my liquid adhesive to glue my shaker panel onto the front of this little mini note card, and I just think it looks so cute. It's so fun. I think these will be fun to hand out to my daughter to give to her friends. We also are in Girl Scouts, so it'd be really cute to give to the girls for Girl Scouts. And then I'm taking one of my little sentiment images and gluing it right to the center on the front of the panel. And I know that it covers up a lot, but that's what I'm going for here. And you can definitely tweak this to fit how you like to make your shaker panels or little mini note cards yourself. I went ahead and assembled the other 3 off camera since it was the same process, and I'm adding the rest of my cute little Halloween sign images to the front of these panels. For the inside, I die cut some white cardstock with the rectangle die from the set, and I'm going to stamp Happy Halloween, which is the last sentiment in the set, in some purple ink, and I'm using a VersaFine Clair, which makes it really easy to stamp one time without worrying about it not having a nice clean impression. Once all 4 of those are stamped, I'll go ahead and grab my tape runner, and I'm going to add these to the inside of my little mini note cards so there's a little bit of room to write a little note or just sign our names. And I think these are just so cute and so fun to hand out. So let's take a final look at these little mini note cards. Here's my happy haunting, and you could see the fun background peeking through behind my image and all those cute little clay embellishments. And then again on the inside, you can write a little note. We have our trick or treat, boo to you, and spooky wishes. I hope you enjoyed this fun little tutorial on how you can step up your mini note cards or create something fun that's not candy related for Halloween. Here's one final look at those cute cards, and thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!